So we're going to pick up where we left off, and with chapter 3 in my book called The First Shall Be Last. And really, that sort of got started as a result of looking at Amos 3:7, where God says that he's not going to do anything without telling his prophets first what he's going to do. So when we think about the last days, we see descriptions of the last days like this. It's going to be a time that has never been like it and never will be again. It's going to be one of the most significant times in all of human history. Never been anything like it. So I started to think about that. I'm going, okay, he tells us first that he's not going to do anything except he tells us first what he's going to do. And we keep seeing these references to the last days being so significant that there's never been a time like it. So with that being the case, do you really think he's going to leave us hanging concerning the details of the last days? Or is he going to tell us everything we need to know? Well, I come from the position that I believe he's going to tell us everything we need to know, and that he did tell us everything we need to know, including the identity of the Antichrist by name in the scriptures. And so we'll start with that. I believe that the scriptures beginning in Micah chapter 5, Matthew 24, Revelation 9, Revelation 13, and Revelation 17 tell you exactly, in a tremendous amount of detail, who the Antichrist is. But rather than going in the order I just listed, I'm going to work my way backward because it's easier to describe it this way. So let's start with Revelation 17, identifying the beast of Revelation. The beast that thou sawest, we all understand the beast is the Antichrist, right? Before we get started, everybody agree? The beast is the Antichrist? The Antichrist is the beast? Okay. The beast that thou sawest was and is not and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit. Where does the beast come from? Open book test, right? Remember in school we used to have like geography open book test. Go, find the United States of America. And there's a map that says United States of America. Right here. Open book test. Where is he coming from? So he's not coming from Kenya? He's not coming from Hawaii? Says he's coming from the bottomless pit. Now, I've been a student of eschatology most of my adult life, and I've heard all kinds of things. Seems like every other president we have is a candidate for the Antichrist. Henry Kissinger is a candidate for the Antichrist. You know, Ahmadinejad's a candidate for the Antichrist. You know, there's the Mahdi. There's always somebody walking around the earth that, you know, his name adds up to 666, so he's got to be it, right? It says the beast comes from the bottomless pit. So that's where I'm going to look for the beast. And he'll go into perdition. And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world. Stop. What happens to your name if you do not accept Yeshua as your Savior? What happens to it's blotted out of the book of life. That says to me it had to be there to begin with. How can you blot something out unless it was already there? It's my opinion that all of our names are written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, but we have to accept our reservation that was paid for us at the cross. If we don't, then our name gets blotted out. He paid the price. You know, when I was asked to come speak up here, somebody paid for our hotel room. All I had to do was walk up to the desk and tell them my name, and they said, yep, here's your key. Somebody paid for my reservation before I got here. All I had to do is confirm it. I believe it's the same way. When we accept Yeshua's sacrifice, the payment that he made for our admittance, if you will, into the kingdom, then great. But if you say, no, sorry, you know, thanks for paying for my hotel, but I don't want it. And they're like, wow, you know, we paid for everything for you. We did everything we could to get you here. Man, I'm sorry. Depart from me. You know, so who are these people whose names were never written then from the foundation of the world? It is my opinion, based on the research of Genesis chapter 6, that these are people who are never meant to exist in the first place. These may be hybrids. Abominations. If you look at the hybrids that were created in Genesis chapter 6, you saw that they were destined to utter destruction. Throughout the Torah we read this. The Amorites, the Hittites, the Jebusites, etc., etc., etc. Every time we encounter them, you see the words utterly destroy. And this is one of the things that trips up many people who don't understand what's going on in Genesis 6, and why many people become agnostics and atheists, because they can't accept this God of the Old Testament. Remember I said yesterday, many agnostics and atheists actually know the Bible better than we do? Yeah, because they read those things, they didn't understand what was going on, and they threw the book aside and said, this is crazy, this God is a genocidal maniac. Why would I want anything to do with him? Until you understand that he was wiping out abominations and it was an act of love to preserve his good creation from the evils of the bad creations. And Yeshua said in Matthew 24:37, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be at the coming of the Son of Man. Which means, if I take that literally, the last days are going to mirror the days of Noah. And if you keep reading, like in Luke, I believe it's 21, where he's talking, he says, except those days be shortened, no flesh would be saved. Something's going to happen, and it's going to be really bad to the point where God's going to have to wipe the whole world out again, this time with fire, because of a repeat of what happened in Genesis chapter 6. What has been will be again, Solomon said in Ecclesiastes 1:9, right? So it is my opinion that these are probably hybrids. When they behold the beast that was and is not and yet is. There's an interesting phrase right there. How is Yeshua referred to in the beginning of Revelation? The one who what? Was and... So the one who was and is to come. So this one's called the one who was and is not and yet is. Huh. Interesting. And here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads of the beast, remember the beast has 7 heads, right? Are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth. A lot of people will stop there and say, see, it's the Vatican. Or they'll go off into 7 kingdoms, talking about kingdoms. Well, next sentence says there are 7 kings. Not talking about kingdoms there. Now, true, kings rule over kingdoms. That's true. But he's telling us to focus on individual people, not on kingdoms, though they may rule them. There are 7 kings. 5 of these individuals have fallen. 1 is, and the other is not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. And the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7, and goeth into perdition. There's a ton of detail given in those few verses right there. So let's just go with the text here. It says we got 5 have fallen, 1 is, and 1 is yet to come. Okay. First thing we need to address again is that the word that was used there is kings. The Greek word is basileus. Strong's Concordance number 935 defined as a king, a ruler, an emperor. John did not use the closely related word basileia, Strong's Concordance number 932, which means kingship, sovereignty, rule over kingdom, etc. So all these teachers are out there saying it's seven kingdoms. That's not what the text says in English nor in Greek. It's talking about individuals we need to be looking at. So the 5 had fallen. Now, when I first started going down this line of thought, I had read a book by a guy named Peter Goodgame, who wrote a book called The Giza Discovery. That's online for free. You can, I think it's thegizadiscovery.com or redmoonrising.com, I think is his website. Anyway, if you could just Google The Giza Discovery by Peter Goodgame. He was going down this same line of thought and put together a list of the people that he thought fit for the list of the 5 have fallen, 1 now is, and 1 is to come. And his list was based on, okay, if we know we're talking about the beast, we know we're talking about the Antichrist, let's look for people in the biblical account and in history who fit Antichrist-like characteristics. We know what the Antichrist is going to do and some of his characteristics. So let's see how many people we could find that fit the bill, basically. And this was the list that he came up with. And as I did my own research, and again, I consider myself to be a researcher. By that I mean I research what has been searched by others before me. I don't take anything, and I don't want you to take anything that I say any more than I take anything somebody else says, just as gospel truth. Take it, absorb it, write notes down, and go search it out for yourself. Pray and let the Holy Spirit be your teacher, not me or anybody else. So when I hear somebody give something that just kind of really resonates with me, I'm like, cool, okay, that's interesting. I'm going to go look it up and go search for myself. I found that I agreed with the list that he came up with a few exceptions that we'll cover. Number 1, Nimrod. He's the first king in the Bible, in the post-flood world, certainly. He's tried to create a one-world system without God. In fact, his goal was to kill God. That sounds a lot like the Antichrist. Look at what he's trying to do, New World Order. He's going to make war with the one coming on the horse. And wants to, that we know that's Yeshua, so certainly fits. Then let's continue with the descriptions given in the scriptures. We see that this individual has a deadly head wound, right? And I saw one of the heads, as it were, wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. And, you know, a lot of people are saying it's Obama right now. And I will admit there is a lot of weirdness surrounding this guy. And I'll talk about him a little bit more as we get further in this presentation. I personally do not obviously believe that he is the Antichrist. I think he may be an Antichrist. There are many Antichrists. But there is the Antichrist beast, that we're trying to nail down here. In my personal opinion is he's probably playing the role of a John the Baptist type character, like others before him, preparing the way for what's to come. But, I joke about it, but I'm kind of serious. I don't really think the Antichrist is going to need a teleprompter to address sixth graders. And they worshipped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast, and they worshipped the beast, saying, "Who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him?" I just can't see that applying to a dude that needs a teleprompter to read in front of sixth graders to give a speech. He doesn't impress me, put it that way. But if we look at the list, looking for somebody who has a deadly head wound, well, Nimrod, in numerous accounts of this character, he became known by many names. We talked about last night how at the Tower of Babel, everybody was under his leadership, all gathered together, and then the confounding of the languages, they went out to 70 different languages, 70 different people groups, went their different ways, talking about the same guy, now with different languages. So he took on different names. All right. But in the various stories of some of these names that he became known by, you'll see that he was chopped up. Osiris was chopped up into 14 pieces, only 13 of which were found. In numerous cases, you see the mutilation of this individual. The book of Joshua tells you that Esau cut off Nimrod's head. Esau was known as a mighty hunter, right? His dad loved him because he could bring home the venison, right? Remember the whole deal where he, Jacob fooled his dad, the whole deal with that. He was a good hunter. He was a teenager. He's about 15 years of age, I believe, 13 or 15, I forget, but I think he's 15. According to the Joshua account, he was out hunting. Nimrod's pushing about 200 and change, 230, 215, something like that, years of age. He was known as a mighty hunter. He's out there, 2 alpha dogs in the same field. Esau waits in ambush and at the opportune time rushes out and cuts off Nimrod's head and kills his other 2 buddies that were with him. Meanwhile, Nimrod had a team of other people who were further away that heard the commotion, and they came running to see what was going on, found the dead body, and wanted to know who killed Nimrod, their king. Meanwhile, Esau had taken the coats that Nimrod wore, that according to Hebraic legend were the original skins that God clothed Adam and Eve with, that were preserved on the ark and later went through Ham to Nimrod, according to the text. I think that that's where legends, like in the Greek mythology of the Golden Fleece, some of these stories find their origin in possibly a real event like that. So Esau takes off running. Where does he go? He goes home. He's starving after the battle, and this mighty hunter sells his birthright for a bowl of beans? When we read Genesis, that doesn't make any sense at all. This mighty hunter comes in, sells his birthright for a bowl of beans? What? But when you realize the subtext of what's going on from the elaborated story that we get in Joshua, well, it makes perfect sense. This guy's running for his life from Nimrod's buddies because he just killed the emperor of the world. He's like, what do I care about my birthright for? I'm a dead man anyway. Just give me something to eat. Well, all of a sudden that story makes a whole lot more sense. Right? So, according to the Hebraic text, he was killed by Esau. Now, there are rabbinic legends that say that Nimrod was killed by Shem. There's a number of possibilities of what could have happened there. I basically think that what happened after Esau killed him is that Shem chopped him up into the remaining pieces that we hear about in the Osiris legend, and the pieces were mailed out to people just same way, what's that, the prostitute, I think, in the book of Judges, I think, where she was chopped up and they mailed the pieces to people. They're making a statement, basically. But if you can imagine, Nimrod is the emperor of the world, right? And he's killed, and nobody's there to witness. Nobody saw what really happened. How many people do you think would be trying to take credit for getting rid of this guy? Try to prop themselves up as, I'm the guy. You know what I mean? So, interesting. Pharaoh of Egypt at the time of Exodus, he did not have a mortal head wound. Sennacherib, no. King of Tyre, no. Antiochus Epiphanes, no. Alexander the Great, no. Domitian, no. Nero, possibly. It is said that he stabbed himself in the throat. And by the Hebraic understanding, that may be considered part of the head. Okay, let's give it the benefit of the doubt. And according to the official historical narrative, Hitler supposedly shot himself in the head. Although recent forensic evidence disputes that, they found that skull was actually a female skull, and there's no real evidence at all that showed that Hitler killed himself. In fact, there's a lot more evidence that suggests he probably got away, made his way to Argentina or someplace like that. So, but for the sake of argument, let's just say we got 3 candidates right there. Well, as we mentioned already, one of the titles used for the Antichrist throughout the Old Testament is the Assyrian. Which one fits that title? Only one. Nimrod. So by process of elimination, we've landed on Nimrod. We have the name of the Antichrist, the beast that comes out of the bottomless pit, given for us in Scripture in Revelation 9, verse 11. 9:11. Interesting. And they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit. Where did the beast come from? Okay. Whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon, which is a derivative spelling of Apollo. Same character. So it just told you who the Antichrist is. It's Apollo. And when you realize who Apollo is, and you start looking at the synchronicities of various mythologies, you realize, the Greeks are just borrowing from the Egyptians, who are borrowing from the Sumerians and the Babylonians, etc. And the Romans come along and borrow from the Greeks. Everybody's borrowing from each other, taking all of a sudden Zeus becomes Jupiter, and, they're taking the gods of those who came before them, renaming them in their own language and assigning attributes to them, and sometimes keeping the attributes borrowed from the other cultures. All right, so Apollo is the name of the Antichrist. 666, we all know about the number of the beast. We said that he was 1/3 man, right? Well, man is a carbon-based organism. The carbon molecule consists of 6 protons, 6 electrons, 6 neutrons. So just by default, man's number would be 666 by the carbon molecule. 2/3 God, 66.6. The Washington Monument represents a phallus. The obelisk in antiquity is a representation of the 14th piece of Osiris that was not found, that Isis fashioned in order to impregnate herself. So this is a disgusting object right here in our nation's capital, sticking up like a middle finger to God. And it's the largest phallic symbol in the world, standing at 6,666 inches tall by 666 inches wide at the base. When we talk about Nimrod, just by way of review, in my Teaching the Mythology and the Coming Great Deception DVD, these are just some of the names that he became known by. There are many more. For the purpose of this talk, I'm going to focus on the ones in red: Gilgamesh, Orion, Apollo, and Osiris. Because some very interesting things have happened in the last few decades. They found the tomb of Osiris in 1999. Dr. Zahi Hawass is one of the most renowned Egyptologists out there. He said, "I have found a shaft going 29 meters vertically down into the ground, exactly halfway between the Chevron pyramid and the Sphinx. At the bottom, which was filled with water, we have found a burial chamber with 4 pillars. In the middle is a large granite sarcophagus, which I expect to be the grave of Osiris, the god. I have been digging in Egypt's sand for more than 30 years, and up to date, this is the most exciting discovery I have made." This is what they found. Where the red star is between the middle pyramid and the Sphinx, that's where they found this opening. For years, I thought it was just a watering well, because it was an opening, but it had water in it. And, people would play in it or do stuff in it or whatever. For whatever reason, they decided, let's pump the water out and see what this thing really is. So they pumped the water out, went and found that it went down into this antechamber there, and they walked around, found another opening, and went down, and they found an area that had 6 sarcophagus and another opening, a 7th one. How many heads did the beast have? 7. 6 and 1, right? So you had 3 here, 4, 5, and you went down into the other one down here. So they went down there, and this is what they found. This is an artist's rendition of what they found. The lid was open, and there was a body in it. So like the lid was ajar, is off to the side, and they found a body in it. And everybody, after they examined it, determined this is not Osiris. Very likely it was somebody put into this chamber, probably with the hopes of being resurrected. Could this be a resurrection chamber, I think, is the big question. And it didn't work, apparently. The person was still there. So, flash forward a few years later, the tomb of Gilgamesh was found in April of 2003. And in this case, there was a body. And it was a very large body. And from all accounts that I had read and heard about this, the body was still very well preserved. I believe that Osiris was the very first mummy, the first person to be preserved through mummification.
Imagine the startling proposition that the Nephilim, the giants, the mighty men of old, the gods and children of the Watchers, could somehow rise up, could somehow be reconstituted inside of a body. And, of course, I've discussed with you before my theory that one of the greatest legends in history could be a record of that having actually happened. And I'm referring to Nimrod, who some scholars also identify as Gilgamesh of Sumerian fame, Apollo of Greek fame, Osiris of Egyptian fame. And this Gilgamesh was a giant who a lot of people didn't even believe was anything more than myth until his grave marker was found a few years back. And then, according to some people, the military swooped in and took possession and control of that dig.
Hey, Tom, I want to interject something. I talked to a special operations general who was there when Gilgamesh's remains, and his words were he was in a state of remarkable preservation, okay? He said they have Gilgamesh's remains. So if they have Gilgamesh and he is Nimrod, they got it. And the whole point was to extract the DNA.
And this body was pulled out of the desert sands of Iraq in April of 2003, coincidentally 1 month before we set up the military occupation phase. And the first thing our troops did was raid the Museum of Baghdad. 170,000 items were reported stolen, most of them returned. Of the 3,000 items that were not returned, they were cuneiform tablets and things related to resurrection and the afterlife. 1 month after finding this body, and apparently one of their primary goals was to extract DNA.